Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Back after, just over a week off. Had to decompress after the tour. It was a bit of a mad tour. And hey, as usual, when I'm off, plenty of stuff happened. We had one signing, two more probably going to be completed tomorrow. Plenty of Harry Kane backwards and forwards stuff, which obviously is still to be resolved either way. But yeah, I'd like to think that you guys kind of got your money's worth of me being away and what normally happens when I'm off. So I kind of came back to the madness that is Tottenham Hotspur today. Straight back into it with the Shakhtar Donetsk friendly, all for a good cause, and also I think some good entertainment for the fans that were there. I think it was 56,000, which is not too shabby for a pre-season friendlies, and obviously. A chunk of the proceeds heads off towards funds to help people in need in Ukraine, obviously, with everything that's happening there. Where do we start? Don't worry. We're going to cover a lot of the topics that you're probably concerned or worried about or happy about. I think we need to probably start with the match itself. It was really interesting to watch as all of these. It's only two other games have been thus far, because it was another very different run out for Spurs. It was a game against a Shakhtar team that a lot of good technical players, and I felt that the way Spurs played really tired them out as the game wore on as well. And that's quite a key thing of what Postecoglou is trying to get across to his players, is that if we keep working hard, relentlessly pressing and pushing, ultimately that actually knackers out the opposition as well, because they're constantly having to react and turn this way and that, trying to deal with what Spurs are doing. And well, we'll talk about that. He was very annoyed about something that happened at the end of the end of the first half. But just straight off the bat, the stats, if you weren't there today: 32 shots at goal from Spurs. Seems to be pretty much over 30 shots in every game so far. 32 shots at goal, 20 on target, 15 saves from, there was a couple of goalkeepers Shakhtar had in between the sticks. Spurs had 67% of possession, made 680 passes at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium today with a 93% accuracy. Just for context, Shakhtar had 304 passes with 7 shots on goal, 3 on target. And like I say, what I really liked about Postecoglou afterwards, and he's been very similar in each of the games, he was quite unhappy, despite the fact that Spurs ran out 5-1 victors in, it was a friendly, but there was a lot, I think, for the fans who maybe, certainly a lot of those fans were seeing Spurs in the flesh and the Postecoglou era for the first time. And I think they would have come away from the stadium thinking, I like that football. Because, they were. There was a lot of, going Cilla Black impression there, a lot of attacking. And I just love the fact that Postecoglou was more annoyed about this little spell of about 5 or 6 minutes before half-time. So what happened during that spell? I think the key thing for Postecoglou is that he wants his players, and he keeps reiterating this kind of phrasing of it, he doesn't want them just to look like they're taking on his instructions or doing what he's telling them to do. He wants them to do it naturally, as if it's an instinct to naturally go into these areas or pass this ball where they feel naturally that's where they should be playing it. And that's what he wants to get across, not feeling they have to because the boss told them to, and that they really are fully into it and enjoying it. And the moment he sees that, that's when he knows all of his methods are across. So there was this moment, it was around the 42nd-ish minute. Spurs had started to withdraw a little bit back into around their own area, which is not what Postecoglou wants. It's what we've seen over Spurs in recent years. Absolutely, this was not what Postecoglou wanted. And it kind of culminated in something that was a bit of a strange thing to do, actually, because it was very much out of keeping with the rest of the game. Pierre-Emile Højbjerg just hoofed the ball forward. There was no logic to it. There was no trying to pick out someone. And he wasn't even under real pressure. It was a very strange moment. He just kind of it was almost like a kung fu kick of a clearance. And it just bounced up the pitch, went all the way through to the Shakhtar goalkeeper. And actually, Postecoglou on a touchline went mad. He just threw his arms up in the air. He was really angry, turned away, frustrated. It was just a moment, I think, when he knew, okay, they haven't bought in fully. And actually, if you wanted any of the perfect proof that it wasn't the way it needed to be, Shakhtar then took the ball up the pitch and scored. It was like the perfect example for him to then be able to say to the players, and that's exactly what he did. He took them in at half-time and apparently really made his feelings very clear. I watched just before I started this, so James Maddison did a little interview with Spurs player, and he made it clear that, yeah, Postecoglou had a word with them or two about that need to be relentless, that need to not... I think the way Maddison said it was putting your foot on their throat, was I think he said. That may or may not have been what Postecoglou said. It may have got kind of lost in the way he was trying to explain it. But the idea is, yeah, don't let up. You're 1-0 down. Don't just see it out till half-time. Sorry, 1-0 up. Don't see it out till half-time. Keep going. Keep absolutely hammering at that door, trying to get through and score more goals. And yeah, you saw the reaction to that after half-time. They came out the gates flying, really. Kane scored the second within 4 minutes. And obviously racked up a 5-1 win in the end. And Postecoglou was asked about it after, and he said, it's not a reflection on the players, it's just where we're at. I think we're doing a lot of things where it's because I'm telling them to do it rather than belief. I really wasn't happy with that last 5 or 6 minutes of the first half. We were just playing for 1-0. That doesn't sit well with me. I don't blame the players because they're going at the moment through my guidance, but it shows me we still have a lot of work to do in terms of getting them to really believe and be the team we want to be, which is not unexpected. We've been working together for 4 or 5 weeks, so when I see things like that, it's a good sort of reminder to me that there's still a fair way to go. And so obviously we could see that Spurs were quite late out for the second half. The Shakhtar were waiting there a fair while. So he was asked, was that the reason they were so late for coming out, was because you were essentially having a fair kind of go at them at half-time? And he said, yeah, that was a fair reason. And he said it with a big old grin, clearly. And like I say, Maddison's pretty much confirmed that, or I did confirm it, really. And I think this is the key thing for Postecoglou, is that he's lost such a chunk of the pre-season in terms of the game against Leicester, rained off. And, of course, just the essence of playing against Lion City Sailors instead of Roma. It's a difference in opposition. It's a natural difference in the intensity of what you're playing against. So that's my one fear for Spurs going into the season, is that they may be hampered by a lack of match sharpness. I think that's going to, if anything is going to undo them in these first couple of games, it's going to be that. From what I understand, they've been trying to counteract that with lots of 11v11 work in training, like actually match scenarios, or playing proper, trying to do the odd game here and there as well. Obviously, it's inter-club, if you see what I mean. It's an 11 versus 11 from within the team. But it's not a real replication of what that game against Leicester would have been, and also a game against Roma. And obviously, because of the quick turnaround between the match today and the match against Roma on Tuesday, Barcelona on Tuesday night, it's going to be 2 different 11s. So that's why I remember against West Ham, Postecoglou said in the next match against Leicester, they were going to try and play an 11 that were going to get at least 60 minutes in their legs. That never happened. Because he pushed them so hard after that game was cancelled in training, he had to then only give them really 45 minutes, most of them. Or all of them, was it? I think, in the game against Lion City Sailors. And you could see some of them were absolutely on their feet. So today, rather than going to the hour, he went straight up to the top. And most of the players, or a lot of them, got 90 minutes. I think he made 2 subs around the 75, 76 mark. And then Kane came off about 80 minutes. And then Skippy. So I think, was it just 4 subs I think they made? Actually, I've got it here somewhere because it will be in my player ratings, just to remind myself. Sorry, the memory's going as I get old. Yes, it was 4 substitutions. So you can see they got so many minutes in their leg compared to kind of what we expected them to be. And then against Barcelona, you're very likely to see a... sorry, just getting my screen back to where it was. Yeah, very likely to see a completely different 11, I think, starting the game, because he needs to get 90 minutes or at least that in a lot of these players' legs. And maybe those who can handle it, he puts a bit more into to try and get them sharper. But yeah, I mean, if you missed the goals today, just a very, very quick recap. First goal, Harry Kane penalty after James Maddison was tripped in the box. Nice little sunny ball to Maddison. Maddison showed quick feet, brought down. Kane waxed the penalty, right-hand corner just out of the reach of the goalkeeper. It was a really nice moment. I'm going to talk about Kane in a minute, don't worry. Really nice moment as he's taking a penalty when the fans are singing his name as he even steps up to take it. And then, of course, after he scores it as well. Then second goal... first Shakhtar got a goal back, like I say, after the Højbjerg punt upfield. Worked its way back. Really nice cross put into the box, and Kevin Kelsey got up above Davies. That's always going to be the issue with Davies as a centre-back. He's that little bit shorter than a lot of the other centre-backs. So, yeah, he was beaten to the ball. Good header. It was actually... aside from the fact that Postecoglou was angry about it, it was actually quite a nice goal from Shakhtar in all. It kind of bore a slight resemblance, really, to Kane's second goal, which came 4 minutes after the break. Sonny again found Maddison. Really nice link up, Sonny and Maddison, throughout the game. Really, they're really finding each other's game quite nicely. Maddison picks out a perfect deep cross. Kane heads it in. I think he got there just ahead of Sarr. That's something to really watch out for. Sarr and Maddison got so many moments where they broke into the box, and that's because Udogie and Emerson, the inverted fullbacks, one of them would always tuck in to add to numbers in the midfield, and that allows Maddison or Sarr more space to run forward. Third goal was... it was Kulusevski, lovely little nutmeg pass through to Kane, who, nice little tidy finish for his hat-trick. He then got his fourth. Manor Solomon came off the bench, dribbled through, had a shot, pushed out to Kane, tapped it in from close range, and then a lovely fifth goal. I think as everyone, I know certainly one journalist who shut his laptop, heading down towards the press conference because everything was all written up and ready to go. And Dane spoiled it for them by scoring a lovely late turn and finish. I think Kulusevski again providing the ball to him. Turn, left foot, smashed it straight into the right-hand corner. Really good for him. Just the experience of scoring in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in front of 56,000 people. Big moment for him. He's had a tough pre-season as Dane. Really hampered by an injury to begin with, and that'll do him the world of good, I think. Especially Richarlison wasn't available with a knock today, which he'll be fine for the Barca game apparently. But yeah, that gave Dane that chance to come on and score a goal like that. So yeah, look, there's no getting away from it. All eyes were on Harry Kane. Of course they were. Just the way things are. Like I say, I came back from a tour where you'd have heard me say in the last video, it was overshadowed on the whole by everything going on with Kane and some other little bits and pieces that would happen on the tour, but mainly about Harry Kane. And I mean, like I say, 4 goals, 80 minutes under his belt. It just proved once again how just huge he is for Tottenham Hotspur, how important he is for Tottenham Hotspur, and how good he can be within this system as well. I know a lot of everyone was watching his body language, to what he did after the game, what he did during the game. It's just the ridiculous nature of the world we live in now, and social media obviously has its part to play. We as journalists do as well. We were all kind of very closely watching, and look, if I'm going to completely overanalyze myself and absolutely be hypocritical after saying that, I kind of felt it didn't feel like a goodbye. It didn't really to me, which absolutely is me jinxing it, and he'll head out the door in the next couple of days. It just didn't quite feel like that to me. Yes, he applauded the fans as he walked off when he was subbed. And yes, he did this lap around the pitch where he applauded them as well. But it should be stressed he does that for most home games, after most home games. And what I did notice, again, could be overanalyzing by myself, unless I missed it, I don't think he did any waving during the walk around the pitch until one of the last few moments when he got to the point where he could see his family up in the stands and he waved to them. So whether that's a conscious decision to not be seen to be waving, or whether it just isn't something he does, he normally just walks around and applauds the fans. I don't know. Again, that is my opinion. That is based on no evidence or anything whatsoever. That is just my opinion. It just didn't feel from someone watching it as a goodbye. And I think that was a general consensus among the journalists as well in the press box. It didn't really feel like that. It's just the strange thing about what's happening with the Harry Kane situation is this still feels, even today, I was kind of expecting I'm going to come back from a week off, I'm going to walk into Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, start speaking to people, talk to people within the clubs, talk to anyone today, because even when I'm off, I tried to switch off as much as possible, which is why you saw I didn't really tweet or anything like that. I just very much tried to switch off completely, whereas today I knew I was back on the clock, as it were, so I was firing off messages to everyone possible that kind of I have contact with, and the general consensus is just this uncertainty over what happens with Kane next, which is really weird. I did think I would come back, and I would come back to a scenario where people are like, ooh, yeah, well, it's going to happen, isn't it? I think it's likely to happen. And it just doesn't feel like that. It feels like it still could go either way. And from what I understand, just speaking to it, everyone seems to be working to the assumption that at the moment he stays. And if anything else changes, that's what they work to. And that's very much what Postecoglou is saying as well. This isn't me, saying anything amazing. It's exactly how Postecoglou is treating it. It seems to be the vibe that everyone's working to, and it seems to be the players as well, is that he's here now. He's a Spurs player. Let's crack on, planning as if he's there. And if that scenario changes, then we deal with that, which is not a good way to operate, to be honest. It's not. And that's why, Postecoglou certainly will want a resolution sooner rather than later, so he can really kind of know exactly what's shaping up next. But like I say, another game that just showed how pivotal he is for Tottenham Hotspur, and how hugely they'll miss him if he does go. That's the biggest thing that I took away from it again. And again, it's nothing new. Postecoglou said that afterwards. We didn't learn anything new about Harry Kane. It just further reinforced what we know about how important a figure he is for Tottenham Hotspur, and how just difficult it's going to be for them to even replace part of what he does, let alone all of what he does. And Postecoglou said it afterwards, and we saw it today. Kane will score a lot of goals in a Postecoglou team. He will. I genuinely think, if it comes to pass that Harry Kane stays at Tottenham Hotspur for this whole season, I think he'll potentially score. He really has every opportunity to maybe score 40 in the Premier League if he steers clear of injury, because. Again, we said it so many times last year, how he scored 30 Premier League goals from the amount of the paucity of chances that were created for him in the across the season is remarkable. So imagine that in a team that is having, what did I say? 32 shots on goal. And that seems to be roughly the number in every match. Yeah, it's interesting. Sorry, it was just some news coming from Germany that they're saying that there's no contact from Spurs this weekend about their latest bid, and they're also claiming there was never a deadline. That's been the other interesting thing as well. Deadlines. I've noticed that one away. Do you know what? I was delighted not to have to report on all of that. It's such a maze of information, and you know what I'm like. I have to kind of double source everything. I want to make sure that what I'm telling you or writing for you to read is going to be accurate, or certainly as accurate as it can possibly be in the moment. And some of the stuff that was coming out from all over the shop about deadlines and extended, deadlines and ignored, and here, there's and this, and I saw this, there was a rumour today about a secret phone call, which is reporters from Germany, I can see literally as I'm doing this, are knocking down, saying, I think there was something about, there was a Twitter rumour about a breakthrough had been made, and now reporters around the Bayern side of things are knocking that down and saying, no, that's not the case. It was madness. And I would not have wanted to report on that and the madness of, was it Friday? Yeah, it was Friday night, wasn't it? When the deadline was supposed to be. Look, I still stand by what I say about Tottenham and potentially letting Harry Kane go, is that it's a huge gamble. You know, the amount of journalists that I speak to that are coming in and either don't cover Spurs on a regular basis or are coming in for game here and there, and they'll come out with the line of, you know, Spurs and Levy, they can't afford to let him go for free next summer. I genuinely think it's more of a gamble to let him go and take the money. And I know that sounds crazy to anyone outside maybe the Spurs world, but it is something that there's a lot of people that in and around the club that agree with that philosophy, that if you let Harry Kane go, let's say for £100 million, there's no certainty that Spurs will spend that money well. There's no evidence that that has been the case previously when they've got money for their big players. The season begins in a week's time. They're not going to be able to replace him adequately before then, if at all. As I said, I don't think you can replace Harry Kane. It gives them only a matter of weeks before the transfer window ends to try and bring in suitable replacements. And let's be honest, the world will know Spurs will have £100 million in their pocket and will be looking for a striker. Yes, Richarlison can play the role, but he's not going to be a Harry Kane. He's going to be a different kind of striker, and those goals will have to be shared out everywhere amongst the team. Whereas for me, you put Harry Kane in that team, and you get Harry Kane scoring a ridiculous amount of goals, but you also get Sonny, Maddison, Kulusevski, Sarr, or whoever else is in that midfield chipping in with the goals as well. So I don't like this idea of, oh yeah, you can take Kane out of it and still, you know, the rest of the team's going to share around the goals. No. Stick Kane in it, have his goals as well as the other goals shared in. Let's be greedy. Let's be as greedy as possible. I mean, like I say, I don't think you could go for a big striker to try and replace him. I mean, the only one you could possibly think of is like a Vlahovic, someone like that. And even he is a different kind of striker for Spurs. You'd imagine it's more likely that Spurs go for someone like a Gift Orban, a younger striker, who comes in and maybe plays a slight understudy role to Richarlison, comes on later in matches and tries to force his way ahead of him. Obviously, Richarlison's going to score a lot more than one Premier League goal that he did last season. So, yeah, there's that. I mean, I saw a Mehdi Taremi linked as well. It's a difficult one now. Very good striker, lots of experience. 31 years old, though, older than Kane. And I saw figures, I think it was 30 million I saw touted for him. That sounds like the most un-Daniel Levy deal possible. £30 million for a 31-year-old who I think has only got a year left on his deal as well. So, yeah, that doesn't strike me as the ideal Tottenham kind of move to make. And as I've said before, the biggest thing for me is this talk about £100 million or so. Spurs with Harry Kane in the team, far more likely to qualify for Champions League next season. And I genuinely believe with Postecoglou football, I think they're going to score so many goals. They're going to be very exciting to watch. They get Champions League football next season, or the following season. You're looking at roughly 100 million, maybe, all in, when you get everything included, the marketing, the merchandising, the TV revenue, everything involved with it. There's your 100 million. So, essentially, you could sell Harry Kane for 100 million, have a season where you're not quite as good, maybe finish 6th, 7th, whatever. You've chucked away £100 million potentially in qualifying. Yes, I know that's not a guarantee, but essentially you've got £100 million but haven't really qualified for anything. You haven't made anything from it. And look, I know there's certain strands of theories that maybe Harry Kane himself is looking for Spurs to get a fee for him rather than leave on a free, trying to do something for the club. I've heard that theory as well. But yeah, it's... I'm just going mad. It's actually sending me mad. Just the thought of selling Harry Kane, because it doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't. I mean, I've got some Postecoglou quotes before I kind of keep chattering on about Kane himself. So what I said earlier about people within Spurs working towards the assumption that Kane was staying just waiting to see if that changes. And that's not to say he's definitely going to stay. It's just that's how people are just kind of dealing with it until they know further information. I can see aggregators already going, as the Gold says that Spurs are working towards the assumption that Harry Kane is going to stay. That's not really what I'm saying. I'm saying that's the attitude people are trying to take just so they can crack on with their work, essentially, until they know. And this is exactly what Postecoglou's kind of says in these quotes I'm about to say. He was asked about the deadlines and what he made of all that stuff. And he said, from my perspective, I don't know what deadlines means. We know there's one deadline and that's the end of the transfer window. Beyond that, I'm in open dialogue with Harry and with the club on a regular basis. I've said to them that if the status quo changes, then inform me. I don't need to know about the comings and going in between. I just want to deal with what's in front of me because I've got to still, irrespective of the outcome of that, I'm building a team here. I can't wait around for a decision either way to get going. We don't have time or the luxury to do that. I'm working with what's in front of me. You saw today that Harry certainly is invested in what we're doing and we'll keep on doing that unless something changes. So that's what I mean. I'm not saying that everyone is working within the club with the idea of Harry staying, great news. They're working, the only kind of efficient way you can do is to just work with the intention that you're staying for now, and if that changes, you deal with it, because otherwise you're just not going to get any work done. Hopefully that's explained exactly what I mean. He was asked about Bayern and the very public kind of way they've gone about this, and he said something similar to what he did on the tour. He said, I don't have a view either way, mate. That's up to Bayern to decide. If that's the way they want to conduct things, it's not up to me to judge that. It doesn't affect me. I don't sit there on a daily basis and worry about what other clubs are doing. I think what is factual right now is that he is a contracted player of our football club. I certainly wouldn't talk about contracted players at other football clubs, but I'm not at Bayern, mate, so they can go the way they want. I love that. That's a classic. Managers do this all the time. I'm not going to talk about this, but I'm going to talk about this. I'm not going to say what I do, but this is exactly what I do. It's always amusing. So he was asked, how do you go about replacing a player like Harry who scores the majority of the goals? He says, again, I'll deal with that when the time comes, you know. I've always had these contingencies in my head anyway, whether it's Harry or anyone else. There's no guarantee about anybody. There's all sort of things that can happen that affect your planning. I'm not going to spend a lot of time or energy thinking about something that may not happen because, again, I don't have that luxury. It'd be different maybe if it was my third or fourth year at the club, if we'd already established the way we play, established the squad, and that was my major issue or only issue, then maybe I'd be a little bit more obsessive about it. But right now, I'm trying to build a style of game, a squad of players, different training. There's so many things that are really important that I can't be distracted by one or two things. And there's also this element of, I could be reading into... Someone's just said it's 101 shots Spurs have had across their 3 games with Postecoglou in charge. That's madness. But I did kind of feel almost that there was a sense of maybe he was slightly not selling the club to Kane, because he will have had these chats already, but making it clear to the outside world that, you know, Harry could do very well in this team. He said, what did he say? He said, there's no doubt that I would use Harry, he means against Brentford, if he were to stay. I don't need today to tell me that. He's a fantastic striker, one of the world's best. I think the way the team plays will help him as well. He loves scoring goals, and you saw today we created a load of chances, and he was the beneficiary of that. Where is it? Oh, I've actually lost a quote. I had a really good one. That wasn't the quote I was going to talk about. Let me just get it out for you, because it was really... It kind of said it quite nicely. He said, it was down here somewhere. There we are. Maybe that was the quote. Sorry. I'll get you all excited about something that wasn't actually that exciting. Yeah, I'm sure that was slightly different. I'll have to look. I think that quote has been slightly differently transcribed to the way it was said in the press conference, because I'm sure he said, in my kind of team you'll get a lot more chances created for you. I can't find that right now, but I'll dig that out and I'll put it in whatever piece I'm writing tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that, because that's really what's worth waiting for. Yeah, and he said other stuff. What did he say as well? He was asked about the lap that Kane did around the pitch, of course, because it's the kind of thing that journalists are going to ask him about, whether people like it or not. That's just part of it. And it was asked, did you make anything? Obviously you can't read anything into that, was the question. And he said, well, you are reading something into it, aren't you? With a big grin on his face. He said, again, I'm not going to tell people how to feel, what to read into it at the end of the day. I don't even know what's in Harry's mind, let alone anyone else's. I think all these things will obviously play out over the next period. We'll deal with what happens from here. What happens from there. From my perspective, like I said, I've still got a team to build here. Today showed me that we've made some progress, but there's still a lot of work to do. There were areas today I wasn't delighted with, so we need to make sure we focus on getting this team right. We'll see what happens after that. Next few days will bring us more answers, hopefully. I mean, it has to before the Brentford game. We talk about deadlines, and that kind of seems to be the self-imposed one from Kane, in that he doesn't want to mess Postecoglou and Spurs around. So if a deal isn't done by the Brentford game, then he will line up for that and then stick around. That certainly seems to be the word coming from around him. I mean, look, I've said it before. If Harry Kane does end up going, while I'm not entirely sold on the idea of going to the Bundesliga, again, terrific club, Bayern, great fans. It is a good league, but it is kind of burying himself somewhat in a league that is not as well watched across the world, and it is a league pretty much where the world will see Harry Kane in the Champions League in those, and for England. So you'll probably most of the world will see him in 15 games a season, maybe 20 at the most, depending on how far Bayern go. And that's not to say Bayern can't go on and win the Champions League. They could. And look, I'm sure he will be able to fill his boots with his new boots from his new sponsors or boot makers. He'll be able to fill them with lots of German silverware, because obviously Bayern are expected to sweep up the German silverware. But I just feel that going to the Bundesliga is taking himself slightly out of the global eye. And I think the people at Bayern have said this. It's more of a coup, I think, really, for Bayern and the Bundesliga than it is for Kane. And I don't think I'm doing anyone a disservice there. It's kind of what they've said, the Bayern officials, among the many words they've spoken about Kane. It kind of feels like it would be a big deal for the Bundesliga to have the England captain, such an international star, kind of go there, a global name. And they have had them over the years, but just for the now, I think it would be such a big signing for them. But yeah, I don't entirely get it from Kane's point of view, but that's not my, it's nothing to do with me. But what I would say, despite all of that, if Harry Kane goes, I think, I've said it before, I think it's all on Daniel Levy and Spurs, really, for creating a situation where he felt he had to go. I will stand by that entirely. This Tottenham Hotspur was never built to fully realise the dreams of Harry Kane and what he's capable of. They never built a squad that reflected just how good Harry Kane is and what he could do for the team. And the irony is the kind of football I think Postecoglou is going to play has the potential to get them closer, especially if they really sort out this defence where it looks like a certain young Dutchman is going to come in and play hopefully a big part in that. It could be the irony that the closer they maybe start to get, obviously Pochettino years were very close, but this season might have been the one. And there's a lot of people that just have this funny feeling that if Kane were to go, Spurs actually could end up winning like a domestic cup or something this year, and that would just be just a horrible irony. But yeah, to me, it does. I think the decisions made by whoever you want to say, the chairman, the previous owner, we've got to say, the board, whoever, over the years in not creating a Tottenham Hotspur that deserved Harry Kane, if that's not too strong to say, or was becoming of Harry Kane is maybe a better way of putting it, that is on them. And this is why I almost kind of feel that there probably would be more criticism if they let him go now than there would if they didn't at least try over the next year to keep him. And then if you're left on a free, you could kind of say you did everything to try and keep him and try and build something for him. But not over the previous years. And that's the big thing, really. I'd be gutted. There's no getting around it. You can tell it in the way that I speak. I genuinely would be gutted if Harry Kane were to go. He's one of the players that I've enjoyed watching the most, not only as a journalist but as obviously a Spurs fan for many years before that. My dad taking me to matches when I was a kid and all that time. I still think what Harry's done. Some amazing players that I've been lucky enough to watch over the years. Hoddle was... I got the tail end of Hoddle as a very, very young kid. But most of my memories of Glenn Hoddle are from like Greasy's 6 of the Best videos and things like that, watching that. I got to see a bit of Gaza. I was still pretty young when he left, and Lineker. And then obviously it was Ginola and the Bales and the Modric as well. For me, as a match-going fan, I think Harry Kane has probably been the one I've enjoyed watching. Sonny's done lots of wonderful things as well. I always put him high up on the list as well. But for me, Harry Kane, I don't think I'll be as disappointed at a player leaving as I will if Harry Kane does walk out the door in the coming days. But yeah, let's talk about kind of what else was there today while we await the Harry Kane news. Talk about some of the other players who impressed me, only quickly because I'm very aware of how long this video could be. I saw some people saying, it could be a 3-hour video, but I'm filming this late at night. It's going to go out late at night, so it's probably going to be one that most people are going to see in the morning. But just quickly on some of the players today, Vicario, I thought he's been quite unfortunate that the goals he's conceded this pre-season have pretty much all been point-blank, close-range shots. He hasn't really had much chance to do anything with. Made some good saves today. Did a really nice flying reaction save. I think it was Newerton had a shot that he saved. A couple of low, brave blocks when players were running through, but otherwise not too much to do. I don't think we've really seen him challenged in terms of crosses into the box and punching away and things like that yet. But yeah, not bad. Not bad. It's too small a sample size to judge him on so far. Emerson, just looking through my player ratings really to see what I gave them as well to refresh my memory. Emerson, he had this dreadful no-look pass in the box. He did fine. I think we're likely to see him start the season. You'd imagine maybe him and I'd imagine Udogie might get the nod over Davies at this point, purely because I think, I said this before, that you'll have one attacking fullback and one who's maybe slightly more defensively minded on each side. I know Postecoglou said about playing Porro and Udogie together, but I don't think that will be in the bulk of games. I think it'll be one or the other. But Emerson was okay. He did well when he had to tuck inside into the inverted positions as well. He had a shot, followed up a Kane shot that was saved that he was knocked over. He did okay. Romero, similar, nothing particularly fancy. Did one of his lunging tackles that got him a yellow card. Always ironic in a friendly when someone like Romero manages to get a yellow card. Ben Davies, he did well apart from the goal. And that's obviously key if you're not going to do that well with a goal. I do think that's a height thing more than anything. And I just don't think he's going to be a centre-back under Postecoglou anyway. And I think it says a lot about how much Postecoglou likes him, really, that he's playing there ahead of Dyer, even though Dyer will be back to better fitness now, ahead of Sanchez, ahead of Rodon, and probably also says how much Postecoglou wants a left footer in that role as well, which leads into something else we're going to talk about in a little bit. Destiny Udogie, I thought was really good. I was glad to see, because we obviously got to see him on the tour. I was glad to see the people in the flesh could see him at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium today. He's a very exciting player. He's very calm on the ball, very good with it in tight situations. I like him a lot. He's got a lot about him, and he's still only, 20 years old? Links up really well with Sonny. I know we had a lot of chat last season about Perisic and Sonny and how that didn't really work. Udogie and Sonny, it's got the potential to be a terrific kind of partnership. The young one and the older one. God, it's mad to think that, isn't it? Sonny is is he 11 years older than a doggy? That's scary. It's crazy, isn't it? The way time works. So yeah, I thought he was very, very good today, doggy. Obviously, a much sterner test to come with the likes of Brentford and Man U in the first couple of games, but yeah, good signs from him. Højbjerg, it's an interesting one with Højbjerg. I think a lot of us just felt he was definitely going to head off, but as each week passes, and the fact that Postecoglou is quite happy to use him in starting 11s as well. I know he said don't read too much into my starting 11s, but you can kind of see the shape of a starting 11 form. Although we'll come to Bissouma at the end of this, and I think Bissouma is going to be a key player for Postecoglou. But I thought Højbjerg, aside from that ridiculous punt up the field, he actually had a lot of good moments. That's the thing you are going to get with Højbjerg, is pressing high up the pitch, and that's a massive thing on a Postecoglou game. He intercepted with a header leading to one of the goals. I think there was a couple of other moments where he pushed the ball quite quickly through to the other attacking players to do stuff with. I think it was Kane's third goal, the hat-trick goal. I think that was when he got in the way and headed it on, and I think it was Sonny pushed it to Kulusevski, then played it through to Kane, and Kane scored. Pape Matar, Postecoglou adores him. You can see he really thinks he's got a star in the making there. He likes a shot from distance, but he also is very good at. That's the good thing about him, is he's played as an attacking midfielder, he's played as a defensive midfielder, he's played as a winger, so he's got the ability to kind of do all the things that Postecoglou wants from him. And I thought this was another very bright game for him. Very eye-catching one. He had this volley, actually. It was a really nice one that the keeper pushed over. I think Højbjerg again involved and teed him up for that one. James Maddison, I'm very excited about what James Maddison can bring to this Tottenham Hotspur team. As long as he can steer clear of injury, he could be such a huge part of the jigsaw at Tottenham Hotspur. And again, why I'd love to see Kane stay is because I think Maddison and he are going to have such a terrific link-up. I mean, you saw it for the headed goal. Maddison just brings something that Tottenham don't have. That little bit of creativity, that playmaker role where, and he said it himself in the interview I saw he did after the game, where Postecoglou wants those midfielders, Sarr and Maddison or whoever it is, to also switch occasionally with the wingers. So Kulusevski will come inside and Sarr might drift out right. Maddison will drift out to the left to allow Sonny to come inside. And you saw it with that goal, was Sonny was on the inside, knocked it out to Maddison. Maddison hit deep ball in and Kane scores. Maddison could be superb. He could really be a huge, huge part of this Tottenham Hotspur team this season. And, you know, he's clearly got a little kind of link-up already with Kane. Obviously knows him well from England duty. So it would be such a shame to see that kind of only be an England thing. I felt Kulusevski got better and better as it wore on. I actually felt first half he wasn't one of Spurs' maybe better players. And I just felt that the second half, he was almost unplayable at times. Whatever was said at half-time by Postecoglou clearly had a real impact on Kulusevski, who was trying things that weren't coming off first half. Second half, he was just all over the place in a good way. Like I say, teed up Kane's goal, got an assist for Scarlett's goal at the end as well. And just generally was just a constant thorn in the side of Shakhtar. Got a lot of kind of hope for how this season pans out for Kulusevski. Under a coach like Postecoglou, he could do very well indeed. And of course, you had Harry. Harry was spoken about, and he could have scored a double hat trick. You know, had a couple of chances in the first half that the keeper saved. Again, you know, it's so frustrating because my hope is that the more he's playing in the Postecoglou system, the more Kane is looking at it and thinking, I could absolutely mop up in the goal stakes here. I could get a lot of goals this season. But then obviously there's the other side of him that's probably thinking, I've been here every season with this bit of hope about what's to come. But I would love it if... Look, I've said this before, I don't think Harry Kane has got any qualms about if Spurs don't accept a bid from Bayern. I think Harry Kane will play the season without any kind of like kicking up a fuss or anything. And he will also, potentially look at a new contract if he feels that the team is progressing like he dreams that Tottenham will do. And that's the beauty of kind of, I guess, the professionalism of Harry Kane, is that if Bayern have a bid accepted, he will look at it and he will decide whether he wants to go. Obviously, people in Germany will tell you he's already decided that. And if he stays, then you've got the two other options as well. But obviously, today we saw his professionalism is not going to dip whatsoever. Sonny, I thought was a really bright display. I thought we got a real sense of what we're going to see of Sonny in a Postecoglou system. It's just allowing him to do what he does best, whether that be going down the left-hand side, absolutely raiding his way down there, or coming inside to create a nuisance in the middle. He's kind of got more of a choice. And like I say, link up with Udogie really well, linked up with Maddison really well. And we were talking about this, actually. If Kane were to go, it's difficult to see past Sonny as a potential next captain. Because obviously Hugo wasn't there today. We're all assuming he's going to head off now. If Højbjerg were to go, but I'd even say maybe if Højbjerg stays, I think Sonny becomes the natural choice. I think in terms of years at the club, he's the national captain of South Korea. He's a guy that would become Spurs' biggest star if Harry Kane goes. I mean, you might argue that Sonny is known by more people because of obviously the incredible love for him. Obviously, he's loved across the world by a lot of people, but obviously across Asia, it's amazing having witnessed it firsthand. The love people in Asia have got for him and across the countries there. It's not even just South Korea. I've seen it in so many different places. I wouldn't be shocked if Sonny became the next captain. I really wouldn't. Another captain that leading by example. And Spurs have had a few of those. Sonny played well. Lo Celso came on, it just kind of brought fresh legs. Solomon kind of brought what he does, and it led to Spurs and Harry Kane's fourth goal. A little bit of trickery, a little bit of dribbling, and kind of direct play. Then Dane Scarlett came late on and contributed that lovely finish. And Skippy came on for the last couple of minutes just to replace Sarr. Didn't really have much time to do too much, although he did go on one little break down the left-hand side, but just wasn't quite able to put the required quality ball in. But yeah, so that was pretty much my opinions in a nutshell on the players. There was another Tottenham player to be in the stadium. Actually, there was technically another Tottenham player as well, because I think Ashley Phillips was watching on. Obviously, he has signed since I was off. So yeah, another signing that was confirmed while I was off. Which, just quickly on Ashley Phillips, that was a classic case of a club trying to, I guess, be clever in terms of Blackburn looking to, how do I put this politely, looking to get a little bit more than they probably were going to get from Spurs, and maybe hoping other teams would come in. And it backfired massively. And I think it ended up being, I don't know whether there's something more to it that they can eke out of it in terms of any tribunal stuff, I don't know. But ultimately it looked like it ended up going with the release clause, which I think was about 2 million. Obviously there could be knock-on effects of add-on sell-on fees, things like that. Excuse me. But 2 million, when I think Spurs were paying more than that originally. So yeah, massively backfired for a club in Blackburn that obviously financially was struggling anyway. Like I say, because he's part, club trained, all of that has come through their academy, there could be other elements to it in the future. But certainly, yeah, it didn't work very well for him. He's a big lad. Everyone I've spoken to at Spurs today was like, he is a proper unit, Ashley Phillips. And, he's going to be training with the first team, and he's going to... they're going to just watch him really carefully, like I say, and see how it develops. I'd imagine maybe look for a loan in January just to get him more experience, to get him first team football. I think he's only had 8 championship appearances for Blackburn, so maybe they give him some time and let's say a Carabao Cup, not to start maybe, but later on in the game, potentially FA Cup in January before letting him go out later that month. That would make sense. Just get him in the Postecoglou system really and working within it, but very much one for the future. But But the other player who was up in the stands was Micky van de Ven, because that was the other big development while I was off, is that Spurs certainly are almost there. He's going to do his medical tomorrow. I saw, again, while I was away, the price tag I saw out there was about £43 million, which is more than the initial kind of fee that we saw out there for him. And very much shows that Spurs have just thought, you know what, I think we have to do this. We have to do this for Postecoglou. And I'm sure Postecoglou made that very clear as well. And yeah, he was up there in the... They have kind of these boxes where you often see family and players' families and various people from the club or prospective new signings go in. Sometimes agents, important people, and yes, Van de Ven was there. People noticed him very quickly. I've seen some footage of him doing a few selfies as well. Some of the fans turning around and chanting at him when they saw him. Look, he's going to be perfect for the Postecoglou way because he's technically good on the ball, he's big, he's strong, but he's also lightning quick. So he's going to be able to mop up behind him because this Postecoglou team will concede chances. It will. The idea of a Postecoglou team is to overwhelm the opposition with relentless waves of attack. And that works. Well, it seems to have worked in his career thus far, Postecoglou, but it will, especially for some of the better teams, allow access around it at times and people to get playing a ball either over it or around it, and that requires you to have top quality defenders with a bit of pace, and that is what they're hoping from Van de Ven. Definitely a young player, but one for the now, but also one with a huge ceiling just on how good he can become for Tottenham. So yeah, Postecoglou was asked about Van de Ven afterwards because obviously we could all see he was there, and he didn't want to fall into the Bayern trap of talking about a player that had already, that wasn't technically a Spurs player yet. So he said, well, like you said, it hasn't been done yet, so it's not right for me to talk about, but there's no doubt we need some bolstering in that central defensive area. We're looking for players that can play the kind of football we want. We need defenders who are going to be able to work in an aggressive formation, be able to defend really well 1v1 and the space in behind. Hopefully we'll get 1 or 2 done in the next couple of days to bolster us in that area. So of course the 1 or 2 done was, and the fact that he said it in the next couple of days was interesting. Obviously Van de Ven, if he were to get tied up quite quickly tomorrow, you'd hope that maybe he'd be able to play some part in the trip to Barcelona. Maybe. It's a bit of a push. It's a bit of an ask. Like Ashley Phillips wasn't involved today because he hasn't even had a training session with Postecoglou yet. So, you know, whether that becomes an issue for Van de Ven, the problem is, I think, is if you want to have any hope of getting him in there for the Brentford game, you want him to at least get some minutes in his legs in a match alongside his teammates and in this system. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with him. But I thought it was quite interesting just the fact that he's a 1 or 2 in the next couple of days. So Spurs have kind of slightly distanced themselves a little bit from talk of Edmund Tapsoba in the last couple of days. I don't know whether that's just because Leverkusen very much seem to have made a point that he's not for sale, or whether that's just because the fee has risen to such a high, kind of almost unrealistic fee that maybe the only way that they look again is if Kane were to go and they would decide to put a big old whack of money there instead. But you would think that at this point it would lend itself more now to, obviously they're going to spend 43 million on Van de Ven, then the rest of that centre-back kind of money going towards, I guess, a more moderately priced one. This is just me kind of spitballing and thinking about it. That would lend itself maybe more to someone like a Tosin Adarabioyo at Fulham, who I know Spurs have really, really been heavily interested in, and there was a real expectation that bid was going to come in this week. I also have seen that there's been some reports suggesting that he really wants to go to Monaco, who are also interested. I guess the issue for him would be maybe at Monaco he would start regularly, whereas at Spurs, let's be honest, the likely 2 are going to now be Romero and Van de Ven. So Adarabioyo would come in as a backup to one of those. So I can understand why there might be some kind of reluctance there if that were the case. But certainly I know Spurs Really like him. There was an expectation that bid was going to arrive for him. And there's talk about him being worth being less than 20 million at Fulham. Some talk of even maybe 14, 15 because he's in the last year of his contract. So you've got him, and then I know some people aren't massive fans of this idea, but Clement Longley, of course, is still there and a potential option. I think the last talk was that he wasn't keen on a Saudi move. I know there'd been some clubs looking at him, or one club looking at him. The thing I would say about Longley, remember what I said earlier about Postecoglou seemingly really wanting to have like a left footer there, which is why maybe Davies has been playing there ahead of some players that can play on the left if required. Roden and Dyer can both play on the left. So I do wonder whether Longley, yes, he hasn't got the pace of a Van der Ven, nowhere near, but technically, and the fact that he's very good with his left foot, maybe lends himself better to that. And also, you'd have noticed today, if you're at the stadium, often one of the centre-backs is pushing into midfield as well to create another person in there, and Longley can certainly do that. So, again, there's some people that are not going to like the idea of Clement Longley, and they will see him as a cheap option. But I personally, as a backup option, I don't think it's the worst deal in the world. I just don't. I think he's very well respected at Spurs. He's a great professional, and I don't think he's as bad a defender as some people have decided to make out. I think he had his first year in the Premier League, and I think he took some adjusting to it. You may find that the Postecoglou system ends up favouring him better. Maybe the high line actually causes him more problems. You don't really know till you can see him in it. But certainly I think he has the quality on the ball to use and recycle the ball very well. And if he is a player that's going to come in as a backup and maybe play 10, 15 games a year, is it the worst deal in the world? I don't think so. But I can understand why people want something a bit sexier, a kind of a different kind of signing. I get that. But there you go. That's just me. I suppose because in that scenario you'd have Longley as the backup for the left-sided centre-back and Dyer for the Romero's backup. And then you've got maybe one of the others stays as another one, or you do have Davies at push, or you've got young Ashley Phillips coming through, and you've got Alfie Dorrington, who's also coming through as well. You would imagine Joe Roden heads off. I think there just needs to be kind of more interest in him, really. Davinson Sanchez has been a little bit of interest in him. Obviously, we saw Spurs accept a bid from Russia and Spartak Moscow. Yes, we've got various opinions on that. And there's also Japhet Tanganga. We're still to find out what's going to happen with him. Any of those three involved today at all in the squad. So yes, it's all about kind of outgoings as well. He did actually say something about outgoings. Let's see if I've got it here. He said, I don't have a fixed number in my head for the size of its squad, but fair to say our squad is too big at the moment, and there are obviously guys who will look for opportunities elsewhere. From my perspective, it's not something I'm involved in. I will deal with what's in front of me, and I think we'll see some movement out over the next few weeks. We've obviously got a bit of time before the end of the transfer window. So it sounds like he's not too fussed in that regard with the rest of the squad about it taking a little bit more time to get them out. And it may just be the fact that there's just not enough interest. Obviously, Tanguy Ndombele wasn't involved today again. Presumably, like I say, Lo Celso's taken a chance. Maybe it was between the two of them and Lo Celso grabbed it. And Jed Spence wasn't involved. You'd expect Jed to head off as well, really, this summer, whether it's on loan or if a big enough bid came in. I'd imagine a loan's probably more likely at this point. So, yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anyone else. Brian Hill, obviously, while I was off as well. Another one, he had to have surgery on a groin injury. I imagine that would rule out a loan move for him now this summer. So, he's potentially got the chance now. I'm intrigued to see what happens to Ivan Perisic. I think money-wise, you'd think Spurs would look to kind of get him off the wage bill. But actually, as I said in the last video, on the tour, he was one of the sharpest players and fits the Postecoglou system as a winger really well because he's got that fitness to kind of press as well. So, yeah, but then with Brian Hill staying, do you need him? You've got Solomon and Hill there as well. One to keep an eye on there, really. Of course, and another signing, although I don't believe he was there today, but also doing his medical tomorrow, is Alejo Velis. Alejo Velis? Oh, I'm sorry. I've literally come back in and I haven't even done the kind of homework on how you pronounce his name, so I'll just call him Velis from now. He's going to cost around £12 million. 19-year-old, talented lad, 11 goals in 23 league games for Rosario Central in Argentina, despite the fact that, like I say, only a teenager. I would say don't get your hopes up that this is a player massively for the now at this point. Who knows? He could just suddenly find that the Premier League is his bag, baby. But everything that seems to be suggested about him is he is one for the future. Potentially kind of getting bits and pieces of minutes here and there now, but very much one to develop for the years to come. Before he was getting on his plane to fly across, he was quoted by ESPN as saying, "I just wait to sign my contract with Spurs. It's imminent. I will say goodbye to the Rosario fans with a formal message. I spoke with Gio Lo Celso and he told me that I will have his support," which is always important for any incoming player. No, but what that does actually say to you is that, like we suggested in the last video, and Postecoglou said to me when I asked, that Lo Celso seems to be sticking around. If he's telling young players that are arriving, "Don't worry, you've got me in your corner." Don't know why I started to go northern there. Let's sit him back with Guesty. I haven't seen Guesty for a while. Sat next to him today for the match. It's probably the northern tones have rubbed off on me. So actually, talking to Guesty, that was quite a nice segue without meaning it. He spoke in the week while I was off to Argentinian and South American football writer Tom Robinson. And Tom Robinson said about Velis is more in the mould of a traditional English number 9 than diminutive Argentine strikers like Aguero, Alvarez or Tevez. He's a player with a lot of potential, and in the last 12 months, especially so the last 6 months, he's been one of the most informed strikers in Argentina, especially impressive given his young age. Definitely he's more of a long-term project than someone who'll come straight into starting 11, but he is someone who could contribute. His main strength is his heading and his aerial ability. He's taller than most in Argentina, which gives him an advantage. I think he means probably in the Argentinian league and among strikers rather than Argentinian people in general. But his heading ability is really noteworthy. Honestly, I haven't seen a young striker with as good heading in some time. He also links play really well, has decent movement and shooting too. I'm sure the physicality and intensity of the Premier League will take a bit of time to get used to, and I'm interested to see how his back-to-goal game holds up. He's not slow, but he hasn't got electric pace either. He was asked a little bit about his profile in Argentina by Guesty, and he said his stock in Argentina has increased a lot this year for his performances in the league, and also for the Argentina under-20s, where he was one of the better performers in a disappointing World Cup, the under-20s World Cup. The move to Spurs will no doubt boost his profile even more. I think Argentinian fans will be particularly interested to see how he gets on in relation to the national team, as he's a different type of striker to what they currently have. Don't get me wrong, he's a way off being selected, but playing in a top league and his specific skill set will no doubt be of interest to Lionel Scaloni. I think he's got the potential to be a good striker for a top half Premier League club. He's relatively inexperienced, so it's hard to say exactly what his ceiling is, and I see him more of a long-term project rather than someone who would explode into the scene immediately. Success is very much relative to each person's expectations, but I think if he is eased in this season to get some decent game time, makes an impact off the bench and gets 5 goals or so, that would represent success in what would be an adaptation year. Then he'll be able to push on next season and try to become more of a regular. I think Ange Postecoglou is a good manager to develop him too. Full article, guess he's on his Twitter, it's on Football.London. Honestly, if you want to read a bit more of Tom Robinson's thoughts on him, it's a really good piece. But also, I think what you can take from that is this idea that just Richarlison and Velis will be enough to replace what Harry Kane brings. Just no. Just absolutely no. They would need to bring in another striker in that scenario. They just would. Whether they know it or not, they would. So yeah, I think that's everything there covered that I can. In terms of Barcelona, I am heading out there. Looking forward to that. Love Barcelona as a city, and obviously my last experience of Spurs in Barcelona was Lucas Moura scoring that late leveller, which put them through, didn't it, to the knockout stages of the Champions League that year. Obviously, it's not in the Camp Nou; it's at the Olympic Stadium. But yeah, should be Interesting to see, because Postecoglou has pretty much said he will play a completely different 11. As we said earlier, Basuma, it's an interesting one. People have been kind of questioning that. Oh, does that mean Basuma's not starting and all this sort of stuff? Postecoglou loves Basuma. What I presume he's done there is he's looked at two different sides, and again, you've got to get the blend right, because you don't want to go to Barcelona and get absolutely tonked. So you would imagine that it will be Basuma, trying to think, Basuma, Skip and Lo Celso, which obviously is quite a balanced midfield. And then up front, you're probably looking at Richarlison, Solomon and Perisic. Then I wonder whether he gives Brandon Osnago a goal, or whether he just thinks it's better for Vicario to get more experience within his system. It may be that happens, because obviously goalkeepers probably okay to play 90 minutes within 48 hours, especially as he wasn't too tested by Shakhtar. Then Porro, you'd imagine, on the right. Left back would be interesting. Probably Reguilon. That's quite attacking kind of players there. Reguilon, obviously, another one that you'd think will move on. Centre backs, Eric Dyer, you'd imagine. Then it's interesting, because he's probably going to have to play. Actually, it'd probably be Tanganga, won't it? That will tell you a lot about whether Sanchez is kind of on the verge of at least going somewhere. If it's Sanchez and Dyer, maybe it's not that close. If it's Tanganga and Dyer, then maybe Sanchez a little bit further down the line. And then it is a little bit close to maybe going somewhere. And then you've got to look at all those players that we said earlier that haven't even been involved, the likes of Tongi and Jed Spence, Joe Rodon as well. And obviously we haven't spoken about, like, Alfie Devine, of course, is there as well. And Dane as well. So will they get more minutes, or will some of those players who played today and played a hefty amount of time, will Postecoglou think maybe even just 10-15 minutes against Barcelona might be a better kind of thing for them, as long as there's no injury risk of getting more game time in their legs ahead of the weekend? We'll see. But it was nice to be back to Spurs football, and like I say, I'm loving the Postecoglou football at the moment. It's great. It's so much more enjoyable to watch. I'm sorry to those managers who came before in the last couple of years, but it is better to watch. We will see whether it's successful to watch, but certainly it's enjoyable to watch. Like I say, more than 100 shots in 3 games. And like I say, I think that was the most passing today, 680 passes. But all the games have had over 600 passes. They're not sitting back. He's frankly annoyed if Spurs sit back. And really, he's not going to stand for it. It's not going to be a thing that's going to be seen at all. And if it is, it will be stamped out quite quickly. It's good fun. But obviously, again, just everything's overshadowed by the Harry Kane stuff. And that's why we just kind of need a resolution to this. And really, I know it was a friendly. I know it doesn't really mean much in the grand scheme of things. But if I'm Daniel Levy and I'm watching that match, I must be watching that and thinking, why would I let him go for any money, regardless of whether he could go on a free next year? Why would I let a player that good and so transformational within a team, and especially a new team like a Postecoglou team, why would you let him go? Honestly, it would be crazy. And I know there's people out there that want the money, which is, I find that quite fascinating itself. And I get where they're coming from, because they're thinking, is it going to go anywhere, you might as well get some money. But everything I've said earlier obviously shows that I feel differently about that. And again, it's not their money. If Spurs decide they do want to not take the 100 million, rejoice in that. Rejoice in that fact. Have Harry Kane for at least another season. That's a great thing. We'll see. I might get to the end of this video. They normally take about another hour to upload and publish, and there may be some new Harry Kane news comes out. But fingers crossed, please. I mean, the crowd was singing today, "Harry Kane, we want you to stay." They sang it a number of times during the game. One time it was so loud. And like I say, the applause around the pitch, his lap of applauding them around the pitch was probably, I know he does it regularly anyway, but I do think there would be an element also of thanks for that. That was brilliant. And it was just reminding him of how much he's loved at the club. And I just hope that he saw how much he can revel in the Postecoglou team. But we'll see. We'll see. I could talk about Harry Kane forever because he's just that good. And yeah, we'll see. Well, I think we'll have to know by Brentford. So we will. Next week will tell us one way or the other what's going to happen. Like I say, I'm in Barcelona. I'm actually going to spend my birthday out there after the game. Going to try and take a couple of days actually off in Barcelona before returning for the pre-season. So if anything's going to happen, it's probably going to happen on Wednesday and Thursday this week. Just to all those who love kind of the strangeness of Spurs doing stuff when I'm off, keep an eye out for Wednesday and Thursday. But yeah, right, time to head off. Wasn't a 3-hour video that some of you were expecting. I wanted to just try and get everything out there quickly, this one, rather than be a really, really, really long one. And we'll do another one. I'll try to fit in one before Brentford. We'll see how we go. Potentially, maybe on Friday, once I'm back from Barcelona, once we've had the presser on Friday, purely because we'll just know more about the Harry Kane situation, hopefully. We have to, really, for Postecoglou's sake, more than anyone, and our own sanity. So, right, going to head off now. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.